Peace, peace, peace. What is up, everybody? I am OnenO. Welcome to the live stream once again. All right, so today we have a really cool subject, the 3 pillars of change. And I'm going to wait just a moment to make sure that everybody gets onto the stream okay. So I'm going to give it about 60 seconds, maybe like 2 minutes. So if you're watching on the archive, just go ahead and skip like 2 minutes into the video. I'm gonna go ahead and wait here for just a few minutes to make sure everybody comes on in. Let me turn that down. All right, cool. It looks like everything is up and live. Sweet. All right, as I said, today we're going to be talking about the 3 pillars of change. And essentially what these 3 pillars are is I'm going to get into what they specifically are, but as a group, as a unit of information, this information today is specifically designed to help you make a change in your life and also see the mechanism of what you do in order to make change. How is it that you actually make change? So it's not just about information. This is all about action, as you'll come to understand throughout today's video. But still gonna wait. Looks like we got a couple people still trickling in. So once you get here onto YouTube, definitely shoot me a comment. Let me know where you're watching from, because I always like to know who's in my audience so I can talk to you. This is actually a conversation. It's not so much me talking into a camera. I want to actually talk to you about what I'm passionate about. So yeah, I'm gonna wait about 30 more seconds and then I'm gonna start jumping into it. So as I said, if you're just getting here, go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. And in the meantime, for those of you that are already here, you're probably coming from the website, but definitely sign up on the website on the email list. Every time I go live, I send an email blast so that you will actually get notified. And there's a section on my website where you can sign for the email blast. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and jump on into this. So the 3 pillars of change. First of all, what am I even talking about and why is this important? What I am talking about is the process of our brains and the process of our consciousness and how we come to work with the information and the reality around us. How do we actually change our reality? And it's a very simple formula, but it is, when it is not understood, it's almost impossible for you to create lasting change if you don't understand this type of formula. So let's jump into it. What is the very first pillar of change? The first pillar of change is input. Before I explain what input is, what I'm going to do is share with you the 3 pillars of change in total, and then I'm going to break this whole thing down for you. So the first pillar of change is input, that which you put into your mind, into your awareness. The second pillar of change is how you process or come to understand that input. And the third pillar of change is the output. And the output is like the actions upon which that you take. You take these actions based on the understanding of the input. So again, the 3 pillars are input, processing, output. And they go exactly in that order. So let's break these 3 pillars down. What am I really talking about? Input, processing, change, output. What is all of this? Okay. So the first pillar of how to affect change in your life is you must take a clear look at what you are inputting into your consciousness. What information are you inputting in? Most people have a very haphazard way of inputting information into their awareness. You would say they don't consciously put information into their awareness. They unconsciously put information into their awareness. When somebody is watching, let's just say 4 hours of television, and there is commercial breaks every 10 minutes, well, you are putting in every bit of information that is happening on that screen and happening through those speakers, that is being inputted into your awareness, into your consciousness. So at that point in time, if you are just simply haphazardly or unconsciously inputting information into your mind, then that is part of having poor input. That is not a very good source of input, because your mind will instantly absorb everything. That is what your mind is designed to do. It looks at the input and it absorbs it into your consciousness just by the simple act of looking, observation. So the first pillar is input, and it can be likened to knowledge or observation. So the knowledge and the observations that you are gathering around you, that is all the input, and how you actually bring things into your awareness to begin the process of change. If you have poor input or unconscious input, or maybe the better term would be unintentional input, you just have background noise on, or you just have whatever going on and you don't really think about the input that's going into your mind space, that's already a problem, because you need to be aware of what you are putting into your mind. If you just watch reality television shows and the news, and you get all of the information about the world around you from media outlets, and you don't ever just take some time to observe your world for yourself and come to your own conclusions, well, then your input is going to be entirely dictated to your mind space by those that are giving you information for you to observe. They're giving you quote unquote knowledge for you to just observe. But the question really is, what kind of knowledge are they giving you? Or is it even technically knowledge? Is it just something that is polluting your mind space by observing it for an extended period of time? So let's jump to the second pillar. The first pillar is input, that which you observe, the knowledge around you. You observe this knowledge, this body of information, and you bring it into your awareness. That's the first step for manifesting change. Focusing your awareness onto a different or more holistic form of input. And so the second pillar of change is how you process. How do you process, or what understandings do you come to, or understandings do you come to based on this knowledge that is around you? So the first pillar is just simply information, that which you put into your mind space. And it should actually be done in a non-judgmental sense. You should just, it's like gathering puzzle pieces. You don't technically know already in the input phase what the puzzle is going to look like when it's all completed. That is part of the second pillar. The second pillar is now looking at all of these pieces of information and coming to understandings about what this information is talking about. Now, this can be likened to thinking, but specifically it's like, how do you take the information that's all around you and distill a central message out of it? That's the process of understanding, or understanding, as I like to call it, as many people like to call it. And so the understandings that you come to are a very big part of the process of change. So in the beginning of your change, you have to seek out new information so that you can come to new understandings. But here's where the third pillar of change really comes in. The third pillar is all about output. Now, output is like wisdom. But these two terms, output and wisdom are also like action. So the third pillar is output, wisdom, and action. That is basically when you have observed new information, which is pillar 1, you have come to new understandings, that's pillar number 2, because of all this information. You do not have wisdom until the third pillar is in place, and the third pillar is action. So let me give you a very real world example of how I have made a change in my life with this process, with this guideline principle. In my life, about, let's say, all through my life up until about 4 years ago, I didn't consider myself to have any kind of diet. I didn't have any specific way of eating food or not eating food. I just ate what everybody ate, and that was meat, and that was burgers, and that was all kinds of crazy food, all sorts of amounts of fast food, and sugars, and all just processed garbage. So I remember having conversations maybe about 10 years ago now, where I was openly telling people that were talking to me about the unhealthy side effects of eating excess meat. I remember having conversations with these people and telling them that I don't care. I literally use those words. I don't care. I like eating meat. I'm gonna eat it. So how did I actually change? How did I change my mind, and how did I change my world? Well, I changed based on observing new input. When I started to observe how it was multifaceted. When I started to observe how animals were treated, that was a big eye-opening thing for me. But specifically, my observation or my input, my new knowledge, came when I started my yoga practice. I would come out of a yoga class, and that hour-and-a-half yoga class would make my body feel so good that I was hyper aware of how my body would change based on if I would eat or drink something after class. And I started to notice this pattern very quickly. This happened maybe over the course of 6 months to 9 months. I became aware that when I would eat meat, my energy would tank. And so I'd spend 90 minutes in a yoga class only to go eat a meal within an hour or so after getting out of class. And if it was dominated by meat, then I would end up becoming super lethargic, and all of that energy and mental clarity that I had just coming out of the yoga class would be gone. So that was both pillars number 1 and pillars number 2. I started to observe. I had a new input, a new observation, and then I started to notice the pattern, and that's pillar number 2. I started to process this input, and then pillar number 3 did not happen in my life for about 9 months. And then one day I just decided that I'm going to cut red meat out of my life and just see what happens. It's just an experiment. But now I'm taking an action. I made it a conscious action to change my behavior. So input in my body is great because now I have new knowledge, new observations of what's going on in my world. I've come to new understandings based on those observations, but I have not technically attained wisdom until I take action based on these understandings. Wisdom and action are the exact same thing. Wisdom is understanding in action. So if you have knowledge, let's say that you've attained pillar number 1, you've learned new knowledge about some subject. Pillar number 2, you come to new understandings based on this new information. But that is just simply understanding. Pillar number 3 is the output. That's the action side of this. So you have not technically brought your understanding into an active form, you have not technically attained wisdom until you bring your understandings into an active form. So if I notice that yoga class makes me feel very clear-minded, and my mental slate has been wiped clean because of those 90 minutes. If I notice that, that's great. If I also then notice that meat specifically removes that from me, but I do not take any action based on that understanding, then I have failed to attain wisdom based on the knowledge that I was presented with at the very beginning. And so I have then failed to take action. I have failed to actually take the knowledge in, process it, and then behave differently. Those are the three pillars to how you actually manifest change in your world and in the world around you. It is all about being aware of that which you are inputting into your space. So now, I want to talk about another angle on this whole subject. The angle is how our current pop culture is affecting this whole process in you. There's a very real thing going on in our society called anti-intellectualism. And this, in my opinion, is a propagated mental disease. Meaning it's a mental limitation that is being propagated by people that want to mentally limit other people, aka you and me. Who are these people that would like to mentally limit other people? These people own media corporations. That's who these people are. There's only a small group of people in the world that desire to limit the mental space of the rest of the people on the planet. But this small group of people, I like to say it like this: they have the loudest megaphones. And when they write stories or have opinions or want to express their feelings, what they do is they send their opinions down through syndicated media. What is syndicated media? Syndicated media is where one person writes a script or has an opinion, and every outlet that is connected to that one person simply parrots back that original transmission. So when we are just, let's say, I live in Nashville, so if I happen to turn on the television and see Fox News Nashville, even if it's local news, that local news has syndicated stories in it, giving me specific ideologies, mental ideas for me to absorb, for me to input into my mind space. Now, when there's input going in, processing happens almost automatically. The first two pillars of change happen almost automatically. And some could argue that the third pillar happens automatically based on the amount of input going in. So if you have a large amount of unconscious input going into you, and you are doing a large amount of unconscious processing, then you will begin to take action based on those two things, which means you will have a perfect unconscious three pillars of change happening in your life, and you won't know it. You won't know why. You won't know why you're acting certain ways because you didn't pay attention to the input phase. We have this tendency to think that we can turn on things like reality television or fear-based news media and not be affected by it. That's not possible, my friend. You got to cut that stuff out of your life. You got to cut it out of your mental awareness. And you got to start viewing your mental space like the temple of God itself. That which you allow into the temple of God becomes manifest in one form or another. That which you give your time and attention to will become manifest in some form. So if you desire for things to really change, You have to switch your input. You must come to new understandings, but you have not manifested change until you take action on those new understandings. Let me give you another example on how this has happened in my life. About 9 months or a year ago, I started coming across a huge body of information about how our country is a privately owned corporation. Now, I have new input going into my mind. I have been allowing new input into my space, or rather, I have been intentionally focusing on new input, stuff that I don't understand, but I can sense a thread of truth coming from these information sources. So I focus my attention there. I focus intentionally my attention to these new sources of input that are helping me to understand our legal system in a way that I never understood before. So I'm giving myself new input on what the United States corporation is and is all about, and how I interface with it. Now, as I'm taking in this input, I'm using my discernment, because there are some information sources that I came across that were spreading intentional lies, and there are a lot of information sources that I came across that were spreading intentional truth. So I'm using my discernment. Then I go to step number 2, pillar number 2, and I begin to process the information that I find to be true, that I feel has truth inside of it. And I let go of that which does not make sense in the sense of feeling like truth. Now, I've learned how to check my ego in this process, because my ego will always focus on the fear, but I can still come to truths, even if they're unknowns, even if they're uncomfortable, even if they seem to resonate and strike fear. Sometimes it's just my ego saying, oh, this is new, I don't know what to do with this information. So I've learned the lessons of discernment. And then step number 3 is where I'm at now with this whole subject of our United States corporation. I've learned new information. I have come to new understandings. And it is now this point in my life that I am moving to the 3rd pillar of this information specifically, and I am taking action. And I am taking action simply because if I just remain with my new understandings of how the system works, I haven't changed anything. I haven't changed how I interface with it. I haven't changed how I could help my brothers and sisters interface with it. And I haven't changed any part of the world, including myself. So I must actually begin to take action on whatever new information I come across in order for it to actually become wisdom in my life. And this is a direct form of action. I'm making videos to help explain to you all these new understandings and understandings that I have come to, specifically because they have helped to elevate me along my path. And if I have been elevated by information, but I do not take the action to help elevate you with information, then I have failed once again to erect the 3 pillars of change. Because if I observe amazing information in the world and I come to an understanding that this information really helps to change my life, and I don't take any action to actually put that mental understanding into an active form, then it's wasted knowledge from the first place. It's wasted information. And so sometimes it actually goes as far as, if I don't tell you about the information that I'm learning, if I don't take an action to stand and be different and tell you about things that I am learning, then I am not taking part in the 3 pillars of change. I'm only taking part in 2 of them. And anybody that studies geometry knows that the triangle is the first geometric shape that has balance, that has harmony, and is basically the base form of all creation. But that's a subject for a video on sacred geometry, so we'll have to do that another time. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. To recap really quick, to remind you what we talked about, The three pillars of change are as follows: input, processing, output, otherwise known as knowledge, understanding, wisdom, and even further understood as observation, thinking, action. Those are the three ways that you can affect yourself with change. Be aware of what you're inputting into your mind. That is the number one thing to focus on. Be aware of what you are allowing into the temple of God. Be aware. Only let information that will elevate you and all of those that you come in contact with, only let that information into your awareness and into the second pillar, which is the pillar of processing, so that you may come to new understandings. And then, when you are ready, as soon as you're ready, switch to pillar number 3 and take action based on the new understandings that you have come to. All right, that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in once again. And also, I want to just remind you that this whole YouTube channel is set up on a donation basis. So if you appreciate what I'm doing here and the information that I'm spreading, I ask that you would just donate $1 or $2 or $5 or however much you feel inclined to help me continue to make music and videos for you specifically. There is a link right here in this video, both in the YouTube cards section, wherever that is, and the description of the video that will allow you to donate to my channel. You can also find it on my website, which is IamOnenO.com, and there's a donations page on my website. Also, when you're at the website, check out my email section or my contact section. Sign the email list so you get instantly notified when I'm going to do future live streams. And stay in touch. Until I see you again along the journey, oneness in sound, I am OnenO. Peace.